Hello friends, welcome back to my channel Medicine 101. Today we'll talk about sinus arrhythmia. So before starting the topic, let me tell you I have already uploaded a video where I have talked about normal cardiac arrhythmia. Okay, so what are the thing, what are the mechanisms we can get for developing the cardiac arrhythmia. Now we'll talk in details about the sinus arrhythmia, then we'll talk subsequently atrial, arrhythmia, then we'll talk about the ventricular. We'll go step by step. Okay, so let's talk about these things. So first, let's draw a little bit portions of the node within the heart. This is the fibrous annulus part. Okay, now we know that whenever the AC node that will fire, that is having the capacity to what? To produce the electrical, cardiac impulse from here. Okay, so spontaneous, you can write it over here. Spontaneous, it will go undergo depolarization. So spontaneous depolarization. As a result, we will see the productions of the cardiac impulse. Okay. Now first we'll talk about the normal physiological sinus rhythm. Okay, first we'll talk about physiological, then we'll go to step by step in different kinds of the pathological aspects. Okay, so physiological sinus arrhythmia. Physiological sinus rhythm, normally write it over here. Okay, physiological sinus rhythm. Over here. Now for this thing, I have to draw the heart over here. Let's consider this the heart, and we know that the functions of this node that is controlled by what? That is controlled by the parasympathetic outflow, vagus parasympathetic outflow. So for that thing, I'll just try to draw a little bit of the sinus part. Okay, let's draw it over here. So from here, if we get the parasympathetic vagal outflow, so for example, from here we are getting the parasympathetic vagal outflow. Okay, now it will do what? It will just do the controls of the rhythms. Okay, the vagal parasympathetic outflow that will control the sinus rhythm over here. So it will release what? It will just release the noradrenaline from it, and it will control the sinus rhythm over here. Okay, so let's write it over here. The vagal parasympathetic outflow that will control the SA node. Along with that, it also controls the AV node. Okay. Now, for that thing, we need to know a little bit of the respiratory system. Because in these things, I'll talk it right now. You'll understand. You have to know in terms of the respiratory systems a little bit. Now, see, we know that the two phases in the respirations, one is inspirations. I'm writing it over inspiration, and I'm writing it over expiration. Now see, during inspirations, let me say once more again, during inspiration, okay, during inspiration, this will go where? This will go to the vagal sensations over here, okay, and during inspirations, whatever thing we'll see over here, during inspiration, what? We see the vagal action that will be blocked. Okay, that will be inhibited. And during inspirations, whenever we are getting that the vagus action that is getting blocked, as a result, we know that if basically we will see over here, whenever the vagal parasympathetic outflow that will be stimulated over here, that will reduce the heart rate. So whenever the vagus sympathetic outflow that will be applied on the heart, that will decrease the heart rate slightly. Okay, and whenever the vagus parasympathetic outflow. Okay, whenever it will be stimulated, that means that will be applied on the heart. It will, okay, let me write it over here. Whenever it will be stimulated, that will block the heart. Okay, and whenever we will see the parasympathetic vagus parasympathetic outflow, let me repeat once again. Whenever the vagus parasympathetic outflow, that will be inhibited, that means that will be not able to stimulate the heart. In these cases, we will get the heart rate that will be increased, and whenever the vagus parasympathetic outflow that will be stimulated, okay, in these cases the heart rate that will go down, well, slightly it will be decrease. Okay, now see what I want to say from here. During inspirations, the vagal actions that will be what, the vagal parasympathetic outflow that will be inhibited. As a result, we will see the heart rate that will be slightly more. Okay, and during expiration, whatever thing we'll see over here, it's over here, it will just do the what? It will do the inhibitions. And during expiration, it will stimulate the vagus parasympathetic outflow. So during expiration, we'll see what? We'll see the vagal parasympathetic outflow that will be stimulated. As a result, it will just what? It will reduce the heart rate. So in these cases, we will get the heart rate that will be reduced slightly. These all are the things under normal physiological circumstances. Okay, these all are the things during normal physiological circumstances. Now we'll talk about some points. Let's suppose an individual who is having the autonomic, for example, autonomic. Okay, let's write it over clearly, then you will understand. So, for example, any individual who is having autonomic neuropathy. So, any individual who is having the autonomic neuropathy, whenever we will get the autonomic neuropathy, definitely the parasympathetic outflow that will not work properly, because what? Because of having the autonomic neuropathy. For example, in terms of the diabetes mellitus. Now, in these cases, we will get there will be no change in the heart rate, because the parasympathetic outflow that is not working. It will neither inhibited nor what stimulated. So in these cases, we will see there will be no change in the heart rate. Okay, that will remain same, or you can say there will be no change in the heart rate. In the same thing, if we see any kind of the heart transplant, try to understand, if we do any kind of the heart transplant, whenever the just transplanting the heart, definitely the heart, what the new heart that we are just placing within the recipient, definitely the heart that will be not connected with the vagus nervous systems, because parasympathetic outflow. As a result, the transplanted heart that will be not also controlled by the vagus parasympathetic outflow. So in these cases also we get what? In these cases we will also get there will be no change in the heart rate. So transplanted heart, that will be denervation or denervated by parasympathetic outflow of the vagus. As a result, we will see there will be no change in the heart rate. The heart rate, we can write it over, that will be remain same. Okay. Now we need to know a little bit as far as the ECG is concerned. So whatever thing we'll get during normal physiological or rhythm. Now if we just draw the ECG pattern over here, for example, let's draw in this way. Okay, let me draw once more. Cycle over here. Okay, now see. During inspirations, what did I say over here? During inspirations, the heart rate that will be what? Increased. Okay, and during expirations, the heart rate that will get decreased slightly. Now, for example, I just draw this one and another one. Let's draw it over here. Okay, anyway. Now see, during inspirations, during inspirations, if the heart rate is, during inspiration, if you see the heart rate will be more, definitely the RR interval that will be less. So the RR interval, the distance in between the two ROS, that will be less. So during what? During, we'll see, we'll write it over here. During inspiration, the RR interval that will be less. But during expirations, try to understand. During expirations, what did I say? You, the heart rate that will be slow. Now, if the heart rate is slow, definitely the interval in between the we can say in between the two ROA, the interval that should be more. So during expirations, the RR interval that will be more. Okay, because the heart will be little bit, slightly will get the heart rate that will be decreased. So these are the normal physiological circumstances. Okay, now what type of the thing we'll get in terms of the pathological. For example, if we say that in case of let me write it over here, tachyarrhythmia. So let's go through the conditions step by step. Okay, first thing first. So what type of thing we'll get under the ECG? Let's write it over here. Okay, first. Now let me write it over here. When we are doing the ECG, during inspirations we'll get what? The heart rate more. So definitely the RR interval that will be less. So let's write it over here. POF, QRS complex. TOF, again we'll get POF. Again we'll get QRS complex. TOF, again we'll get POF. Again we'll get QRS complex. Again we'll get POF. Sorry, TOF, again we'll get POF. QRS complex. TOF, again we'll get POF. QRS complex. For example, this one. Okay. Now, for example, I have just drawn this one during inspiration. Let's write it over during inspiration. What type of thing we'll get during inspirations? I have already said the RR interval. The RR interval that will be less. Okay. Now, what type of thing we'll see in case of expiration? So during expiration, what type of thing we'll see? Okay, we'll see in these cases that the heart rate that will be less. So heart rate whenever it will be less, the RR interval that will be more. For example, is the POF. Okay. Then again we'll get QRS complex. Then again, for example, we'll get the TOF. Again, for example, in this case, we'll get the what? POF. QRS complex. TOF. Then we'll get again POF. QRS complex. Okay. Now see again. Let's write over TOF. Here. Anyway, now see. If we just compare in between these two, try to understand from here. If we just compare, okay, see the RR interval that is more over here, and the RR interval that is less because the heart rate is more during the inspirations. And what about this thing, the RR interval that is more? RR interval that is more during what? Expirations, because the heart is blocked. Sorry, not blocked, it's slightly less. That means the heart rate that will be less, okay, than the normal. Okay, the vagal sympathetic that will be blocked slightly. The result will see the RR interval that will be more. Now we'll talk about, for example, the sinus tachyarrhythmia. What are the thing? When you are talking in terms of the sinus tachyarrhythmia, try to understand definitely the fast AC node, whenever it will fire, it will just do the depolarizations of the atrium. And whenever you are talking in terms of the atrial depolarizations, definitely what? We will get the frequent POF. Because the POF that is responsible for causing the atrial contractions or atrial depolarization, whatever you can say. So definitely whenever we will get the sinus tachyarrhythmia, in these cases definitely we will get the frequent POF. Now if we just compare, the POF over here. Okay, the POF over here. If we get the POF over here once again, if we get POF once more over here, if we get the POF once more here. Now see again, for example, we got the P wave over here. Okay. Now see in these cases what type of thing we will get? In these cases we will get that there will be frequent P wave because that is causing the what? Atrial contractions. So let's write it over here. First we will get the P wave, then again we will get the QRS complex, again we will get what? T wave, again we will get P wave, again we will get what? The QRS complex, T wave, P wave again. Okay, let's draw it more clearly. We will get again QRS complex, again we will get T wave, again we will get P wave, QRS complex, T wave. Okay, anyway. Now see, when you are talking in terms of the, try to understand when you are talking in terms of the sinus tachyarrhythmia, in these cases we are getting the frequent P wave. This is the P wave we are getting over here, P wave, we get P wave over here, P wave, we get P wave. So we are getting the frequent P wave. Okay, so in where we will get this type of the thing in terms of the sinus tachyarrhythmia, we will get in terms of, for example, during exercise, you can get, okay, or during, we can say during the fever, or we can get thyrotoxicosis. In these cases, we will get the frequent P wave because of that will cause the sinus tachyarrhythmia. Okay. Now, if we say in terms of the sinus okay, let's write it over here. Sinus bradyarrhythmia. So let's in this point, we're talking in terms of sinus bradyarrhythmia. So whatever the thing we'll see in this case, see, when we are talking in terms of the sinus, bradyarrhythmia, that means definitely what? Definitely the sinus, the SN node that is having some problem, that is not able to fire like continuously like this on in terms of the sinus tachyarrhythmia. In terms of the sinus bradyarrhythmia, in these cases we'll see whatever the problem we'll see. In these cases we'll see that what? There will be very less or the not frequent P wave. Okay, we will not be able to see the frequent P wave. We will not get the appearance of the frequent P wave because what? Because whenever the SN node is not able to fire that much, as a result we will see atrial contraction will be less. So whenever the atrial contractions or the atrial depolarization will be less, as a result we will see the development of the less frequent P wave. So in these cases whatever thing we will get, let's draw this on. In these cases, for example, we got the P wave, again we got the QRS complex, again we got the T wave, again there will be what? Again we got the P wave over here, again we got the QRS complex, again we got T wave, again, for example, let's show it in this one. T wave, again we are getting the P wave. Okay, let me show over here, QRS complex, T wave, again we are getting the P wave in these conditions, then again the QRS complex for this one. Okay, now see, try to understand from here that in terms of the, when you are talking in terms of sinus bradyarrhythmia, in these cases we will get the very less, P wave, P1, P wave 2, here we got 3, here we got 4. In these cases we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In these cases we are getting, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4. As a result, we will see the the RR interval. The RR interval, that will be also what? The RR interval that will be increased. The RR interval that will be increased in terms of the what? In terms of sinus bradyarrhythmia, or what about in terms of the sinus tachyarrhythmia. In these cases we will get the RR interval that will be less. So RR interval that will be less. Okay. But in terms of in terms of the sinus bradyarrhythmia, in these cases we will get the RR interval that will be more. Now let's talk about some type of the disease in which we can get some mix. For example, if we get one type of the, let me erase this part for it. Okay, let's write the name of the disease: sinus tachybrady syndrome. Sinus tachybrady syndrome. What type of thing we will get in these cases? See, that from the term it's very clear to it's very easy to understand that sinus tachybrady, that means we will get what? Sudden we will get tachyarrhythmia, that means we will get the heart rate sudden, that will get increased, and again we are getting the brady, that means sudden we will get what? The heart rate that will be slow, that means we will get the Free wave, we'll get the what? We'll get frequent P wave, along with that we'll also get the very less P wave. So if I want to show you over here, then it will be easier for you guys. So let me show this point over here. Then it will be easier for you to understand more clearly. So let's okay. Now when you are talking in terms of the sinus tachybrady syndrome or sinus sick syndrome, another name for it, sinus sick syndrome. Whatever the thing we'll get over here. First we'll get the brady, tachyarrhythmia. For example, I'm writing for fast heart rate for it. Okay, so we'll get the more frequent P wave, QRS complex, T wave. Again we're reading P wave, QRS complex. Again we're reading T wave. Again we're reading P wave. Okay, then we're getting, for example, QRS complex, and you are reading T wave. Now, for example, after that we will get a large space. Then we are getting the P wave. Again we are getting, after P wave we will get what? QRS complex, T wave. Again after large gap we are getting the P wave. Now try to understand from here. In these cases we got the P wave, frequent P wave. Firstly, in the first things we got the frequent P wave. We got the frequent P wave over here. After that we are getting the what? Less frequent P wave over here. Just try to understand from this figure. In this cases the RR interval that is getting increased, but in the first cases, if we just comparing between these two, the RR interval that is less. In the second cases we are getting the RR interval that is more. In the first cases we are getting the RR interval that is less. So from this figure we can say that in sinus tachybrady syndrome and the sinus sick syndrome, we will get the two types of the thing. We will get the combinations of tachyarrhythmia, we will get the bradyarrhythmia also. Okay. Now we'll talk about the last one. Okay. Thing over here. And ultimately, what can you say from this aspect? Okay, let's repeat once again. During sinus tachyarrhythmia, we will get the sinus tachyarrhythmia. We will get what? The frequent P wave. In these cases, we will get the frequent atrial contractions, or we will get frequent atrial depolarizations. That's why we will get the RR interval that will be less. But in case of, I have already said, in terms of sinus bradyarrhythmia, in these cases we will get the less frequent P wave. Because of what? Because the sinus arrhythmia will be less. In these cases we will get what? Less frequent P wave. As a result, we will get the RR interval that will be more. But in case of the sinus brady syndrome or sinus sick syndrome, in this case we will get what? The RR interval that will be less, along with the RR interval that will be also more, because there's the combinations of the both of the things. Okay. In the next part of the video, we'll talk about sinus atrial arrhythmia and ECG. Sinus atrial arrhythmia and ECG. Okay. So in the next video, and if you think that this video is helpful for you, please do like and subscribe my channel. And see you in the next video soon.